Agamemnon stands at the edge of Dune. Not literally, of course. He never walks beneath Arrakis's twin moons. He never faces a sandworm. He never meets Paul Atreides. But his name is already there. It is hidden inside the name Atreides. And that changes how we see Frank Herbert's great science fiction dynasty. It also explains why Christopher Nolan's upcoming journey into the Odyssey creates an unexpected bridge toward Dune. The connection is not a secret crossover. It is older, stranger, and more important than that. It begins with a Greek king, a ruined family, a war launched for honor, and a name carrying generations of inherited catastrophe. Most people know Agamemnon as the commander of the Greek army at Troy. He is the powerful king who gathers ships, warriors, and allies. He leads the coalition against the city of Troy. But Homer often calls him something else, an Atreides. That word means a descendant of Atreus. Agamemnon is the son of Atreus. His brother Menelaus is also an Atreides. Together, they belong to the House of Atreus. It is one of Greek mythology's most cursed royal families, and in Dune, Frank Herbert gives his central dynasty a nearly identical name, House Atreides. That resemblance is not accidental. It is a signal, a compact historical warning placed inside a fictional surname. Before Dune becomes a story about deserts and prophecy, it becomes something older. It becomes a story about inheritance, not just inherited power, inherited expectations, inherited violence, inherited guilt, and inherited myths. Christopher Nolan's adaptation of the Odyssey makes that ancient foundation especially visible. Nolan is taking one of the defining journeys of Greek literature to modern cinema. Meanwhile, Dune has become one of modern cinema's grandest political myths. Both worlds contain kings, houses, war, loyalty, revenge, prophecy, and homecoming. But their deepest connection is not visual. It is linguistic. A name has crossed almost 3,000 years, from oral poetry in the ancient Mediterranean to a science fiction novel published in the 20th century, then into some of the largest modern films ever made. And the name carries baggage, a great deal of baggage. To understand House Atreides, we have to meet Atreus. Atreus was not a hero in the simple sense. His family story was a nightmare of royal ambition. Greek myth often presents kings as larger than life. They command armies, they receive divine signs, they marry into powerful families. But they also pass destruction down through bloodlines. The House of Atreus was perhaps the clearest example. Atreus was the son of Pelops. Pelops himself entered myth through a frightening story. His father Tantalus tried to test the gods. In later versions, he served his own son as a meal. The gods recognized the horror. They restored Pelops, but the family did not escape its stain. That is mythology's cruel logic. One act can become an inheritance. Pelops grew up. He became a king. He fathered Atreus and Thyestes. The brothers fought over power. They fought over a golden fleece. They fought over royal legitimacy. And their rivalry turned monstrous. According to the best-known mythic versions, Thyestes seduced Atreus's wife. Atreus answered with a revenge so terrible that ancient writers treated it as a symbol of ultimate betrayal. He killed Thyestes' sons. Then he served them to their father in a banquet. When Thyestes learned what he had eaten, the family curse deepened. Later stories added more murders, more betrayals, and more doomed children. This is the house from which Agamemnon emerges, a house where power never arrives cleanly, a house where a throne carries old blood, a house where vengeance becomes a family tradition. That background matters because Agamemnon is not simply a military leader. He is a king born into accumulated disaster. Homer's poems do not tell every part of that family history. The Iliad focuses on the final year of the Trojan War. The Odyssey follows one survivor's long return. But Homer's audience knew many of these legends. A single family name could summon an entire tragic history. When a poet called Agamemnon and Atreides, listeners heard more than genealogy. They heard danger. They heard ancient prestige. They heard an inherited claim to command. And they heard the possibility that this family might destroy itself again. That is what a powerful name can do. It can function like a suitcase, one word carrying generations inside it. The Greek word Atreides is a patronymic. It identifies someone through a father or ancestor. Agamemnon is Atreides, the son of Atreus. Menelaus is also Atreides. In English translations, the word sometimes appears as son of Atreus. Sometimes it remains as Atreides. That small difference matters. Son of Atreus explains the name. Atreides preserves its ancient sound. Frank Herbert chose the ancient sound. He did not name Paul's family House Atreus. He named them House Atreides. That choice gives the dynasty distance. It sounds aristocratic. It sounds old. It sounds ceremonial. And for readers familiar with Greek mythology, it sounds ominous. The Atreides of Dune are presented as honorable rulers. Duke Leto values loyalty. He inspires devotion among his people. He tries to govern with restraint. Paul begins as a young heir, carrying enormous expectations. At first, this seems very different from Agamemnon's brutal household. But Herbert was not copying Greek myth scene by scene. He was using an ancient pattern. Great houses are never merely families. They are political machines. They preserve names, claims, rivalries, and obligations. They teach children who their enemies are. They train heirs for duties they did not choose. They turn private grief into public policy. That is the world of Atreus. It is also the world of Dune. In both stories, a family name carries command. Agamemnon can summon Greek kings because he rules Mycenae. His brother Menelaus has a personal grievance against Troy. Helen has left Sparta with Paris, or, depending on the version, she has been taken there. But the war becomes larger than one marriage. It becomes a test of honor, alliance, wealth, and authority. Agamemnon stands at the center of that system. He is not merely fighting for Menelaus, he is holding together a coalition of proud kings. That requires force. It requires gifts. It requires persuasion. It requires threats. And eventually, it requires sacrifices. Dune begins with another great house entering a dangerous political arrangement. The emperor gives House Atreides control of Arrakis. On paper, it is an honor. In reality, it is a trap. Arrakis produces spice. Spice is not just a valuable commodity. It shapes travel, commerce, military power, and political survival. Control Arrakis, and you touch the nerve center of an empire. Duke Leto understands this. He knows the transfer is suspicious. He knows House Harkonnen will not accept defeat quietly. Still, he goes. Because in an imperial system, refusing the offer may be impossible. That is another ancient idea. A king is powerful, but his power often becomes a cage. Agamemnon commands an army, yet he cannot simply walk away from Troy. Duke Leto commands a house, yet he cannot simply refuse Arrakis. Both men are trapped by systems larger than themselves. The pressure comes from above. Agamemnon faces divine demands, political obligations, and military expectations. Leto faces imperial authority, economic interests, and dynastic rivalry. The details differ. The structure feels familiar. A leader accepts a role. The role demands sacrifice. The sacrifice reshapes every life around him. In Greek myth, Agamemnon's most haunting sacrifice concerns his daughter, Iphigenia. The story is not told in full by Homer. It appears in later Greek traditions and tragedies. In the best-known version, the Greek fleet cannot sail for Troy. The winds have stopped. A seer declares that Artemis demands Iphigenia. Agamemnon must sacrifice his daughter. Some versions say he agrees. Some versions complicate his motives. Some say Artemis saves Iphigenia at the last moment. But the central horror remains. A king's public ambition enters his own household. War reaches the family table, and the family never recovers. Agamemnon goes to Troy. He wins. Then he returns home. But home is waiting for him. His wife, Clytemnestra, has not forgotten Iphigenia. In many later versions, she kills Agamemnon after his return. The conqueror survives Troy. He does not survive his own house. This is one reason the House of Atreus became so powerful in Greek tragedy. Victory does not erase consequences. It can bring them home. Dune understands that kind of consequence. Duke Leto's death does not end House Atreides, it transforms it. Paul inherits grief, danger, and a political identity. But he also inherits a narrative. He becomes the surviving heir of a betrayed house. That story matters almost as much as armies matter. The people of Arrakis do not see Paul only as an outsider. Many come to see him through older prophecies and expectations. Paul's name becomes part of a larger machine. It gathers belief. It gathers loyalty. It gathers fear. And like Agamemnon's royal name, it makes personal decisions public. Paul cannot remain merely Paul. He becomes Muad'Dib. He becomes a symbol. He becomes an instrument. That is where the Greek connection grows darker. The name Atreides does not promise a happy, heroic destiny. It warns that dynasties can consume the people inside them. Greek tragedy is full of characters trying to escape inherited disaster. They rarely succeed. They make choices. Those choices matter. But they make choices inside systems built before they were born. Paul Atreides faces that same kind of trap. He has unusual abilities. He sees possible futures. He understands that his rise may unleash violence across the galaxy. Yet every attempt to avoid one disaster can lead toward another. This is not exactly Greek fate. Dune has its own religious, political, and ecological logic. But the emotional pressure is recognizable. Knowledge does not always create freedom. Sometimes it only reveals the size of the prison. Christopher Nolan is drawn to stories built around that pressure. His films often place characters inside vast systems. Time becomes a system. War becomes a system. Memory becomes a system. Technology becomes a system. A person may understand the rules. That does not mean they can escape them. The Odyssey is also a story of systems. Odysseus wants to return home. That sounds simple. But the voyage is obstructed by gods, monsters, pride, temptation, weather, memory, and violence. Every island offers another version of escape. Every delay changes the man trying to return, and waiting at home is a household under pressure. Penelope faces suitors who consume Odysseus's wealth. Telemachus grows up without his father. The kingdom remains suspended. Home is not a safe destination. It is a political problem. Agamemnon appears in the Odyssey as a warning. This is the bridge that many viewers may miss. Odysseus meets Agamemnon in the underworld. Agamemnon is already dead. He tells Odysseus about his murder after Troy. He warns him to be careful when returning home. The greatest Greek commander has become a ghostly lesson. A victor can lose everything after victory. A king can survive the battlefield, then die at his own table. That warning hangs over Odysseus's return. It also illuminates Dune. Dune is full of returns that are not returns. Paul returns to Arrakis after loss. But he does not return as the same son. He returns as a leader with a growing army. He returns into a myth larger than his family. Later, the Atreides legacy continues through transformations that become increasingly unsettling. The house survives, but survival comes with a cost. That is one reason Atreides is such a precise name. It is not just a Greek decoration. It prepares us for a family whose triumph may become tragedy. Frank Herbert was deeply interested in the dangers of charismatic leadership. Dune can feel like a classic hero's journey. A young noble loses his father. He enters a hostile world. He learns hidden skills. He gains allies. He defeats enemies. He takes power. That pattern is thrilling. Herbert knew it was thrilling. But he also built a warning inside it. People who want saviors can create disasters. Followers can turn a human being into an instrument of mass violence. A ruler can begin with survival, then become trapped by the power needed to survive. Greek myth knew this feeling well. Heroes and kings often look magnificent from far away. Move closer, and the cost appears. Achilles wins glory, but he dies young. Agamemnon wins Troy, but he returns to murder. Odysseus reaches home, but only after years of loss and bloodshed. The ancient stories are not simple celebrations of power. They ask what power does to a person. They ask who pays for a king's ambition. They ask whether victory can ever truly settle an old debt. Dune asks similar questions in a different language. Instead of bronze armor, there are still suits. Instead of wooden ships, there are spacecraft. Instead of Olympian gods, there are empires, religious institutions, breeding programs, and economic monopolies. But the human pressure remains. A family believes it can manage history. History proves larger. The Atreides name also fits Dune because it sounds like a house already burdened by reputation. The Harkonnens are openly associated with cruelty and domination. The Atreides are associated with loyalty and honor. That contrast matters. Yet honor does not keep them outside history. In Greek tragedy, noble intentions do not always prevent terrible outcomes. Sometimes they make the tragedy sharper. Agamemnon believes he must lead. He believes the army needs him. He believes the expedition cannot fail. But his leadership carries consequences for Iphigenia, Clytemnestra, and the entire household. Paul believes he must protect his mother. He must survive House Harkonnen. He must find a path through Arrakis. But every choice expands his influence. Every victory gives him fewer ordinary options. The hero becomes a political force. Then the political force becomes difficult to control. There is another connection between Homeric Greece and Dune. Both are worlds where resources create destiny. Troy stands near the Dardanelles. That region connected the Aegean world with routes toward the Black Sea. The historical Troy was positioned near important waterways and trade networks. This does not prove that the Trojan War happened exactly as Homer described. It does not. The evidence is complicated. Archaeology has revealed ancient settlements at Hisarlik, in modern Turkey. Several layers show that the site was occupied and destroyed over centuries. But no single discovery has confirmed every character and event from epic poetry. Still, Homer's Troy was never just a romantic city. It stood at a strategic threshold. Control of routes can become a reason for conflict. Dune makes that principle visible on a planetary scale. Arrakis is valuable because of spice. The spice supports interstellar navigation. It sustains wealth and political power. Everyone may speak of honor, duty, revenge, or destiny. But beneath those words lies material pressure. Who controls the resource? Who carries it? Who profits from it? Who dies to protect it? Ancient epics sometimes hide economics beneath glory. Dune brings economics into the light. That makes its Greek name even more interesting. Herbert takes a mythic dynasty and places it inside a resource war. The result feels ancient because it is ancient. Empires have always turned resources into stories. A war may be explained through insult or marriage. A conquest may be explained through civilization or security. But ports, grain, metals, land, taxes, and trade often sit nearby. The people at the top may believe their own noble language. The people below them still feel the price. That is true in Homer. It is true in Dune. And it is true far beyond both. The word house matters too. In modern speech, a house can mean a building. In ancient and medieval politics, it means much more. A house is a lineage, a household, a property network, a claim to land, a group of servants, soldiers, clients, and relatives, a memory of ancestors, a promise that children will inherit what parents built. In Homeric poetry, royal households are centers of wealth and authority. Feasts take place there. Guests receive protection there. Weapons are stored there. Marriage alliances are negotiated there. But the household can also become the scene of betrayal. Agamemnon's home is where his story ends. Odysseus's home is where his final conflict begins. In Dune, House Atreides works the same way. It is not only Duke Leto, Jessica, and Paul. It includes retainers, soldiers, advisors, traditions, and subjects. When House Atreides moves to Arrakis, an entire political organism moves with it. Its destruction therefore reaches beyond one family. People die because the house falls. Others choose loyalty because the house survives in memory. The name becomes portable. It travels through exile. It travels through rumor. It travels through prophecy. That is exactly how dynastic names work in epic stories. They can outlive cities. They can outlive bodies. They can even outlive the meaning that first created them. For Christopher Nolan, the Odyssey offers a world where names have immense weight. Odysseus is not merely a traveler, he is a king of Ithaca. Telemachus is not merely a boy, he is Odysseus's son. Penelope is not merely a wife, she is the guardian of a threatened household. Agamemnon is not merely another warrior, he is an Atreides. That word places him in a chain of fathers, sons, crimes, and crowns. Modern audiences may not hear that chain immediately, but Homer's original listeners would have understood its force. The same is true for House Atreides. A reader can enjoy Dune without recognizing the Greek reference. The story still works. The characters still work. Arrakis still feels immense. But the name adds another layer. It tells us that this house belongs to an old storytelling tradition. The family may be admirable. The family may be heroic. But the family is not safe. Its greatness may contain its ruin. This is especially important because Dune's title character is not Paul. Dune is the planet. The desert is older than the family. The ecology is older than the empire. The Fremen are not background figures in an Atreides drama. They are people with their own history, culture, and survival strategies. Paul enters their world. Then he becomes entangled with it. That distinction matters. Greek epics often center kings and warriors. Dune repeatedly asks viewers to look beyond the noble house. Who lives under imperial rule? Who is treated as a resource? Who carries the burden of outsiders' ambitions? The Atreides name can inspire loyalty, but it can also turn a people's hope into a weapon. That is why Herbert's use of heroic language remains uneasy. The story invites admiration. Then it asks us to examine admiration itself. Nolan's Odyssey may encourage similar questions. The modern image of Odysseus is often clever, adventurous, and resilient. Those qualities are real, but the Odyssey is not only an adventure story, it is also about what war leaves behind. Odysseus returns after Troy, yet he cannot simply resume his old life. He has been changed by violence. His household has been changed by absence. His son has grown up under uncertainty. His wife has endured years of pressure. The story asks whether home can be restored, and if it can, what must be done to restore it? Agamemnon's ghost makes the answer more troubling. Not every homecoming ends in reunion. Some end in revenge. Some end in murder. Some end in another generation inheriting the damage. Dune's Atreides story carries that same unease forward. A house may be saved, but saved for what? A ruler may defeat an enemy, but what happens after the enemy falls? A prophecy may unite people, but what happens when unity becomes conquest? These are not questions that arrive after the story. They are inside its central name. Atreides, the descendants of Atreus, the heirs of a cursed family. There is a temptation to treat literary references like hidden trivia. A name appears, someone recognizes it, then everyone moves on. But references can do more than reward recognition. They can shape expectation. When Herbert chose Atreides, he connected his future empire to ancient tragedy. He made Paul's family feel both noble and precarious. He gave their rise an echo of old royal disasters. And he invited a question that Dune never fully lets us avoid. Can anyone inherit power without inheriting its violence? Agamemnon offers a grim answer. No, not easily. His authority is built on family claims and military force. His campaign demands obedience. His return brings old wounds to the surface. He is powerful enough to lead Greece against Troy. He is not powerful enough to escape his own history. Paul Atreides offers a different but equally difficult answer. He sees more than Agamemnon ever could. He understands patterns. He anticipates consequences. Yet he remains caught inside a future built from religion, empire, revenge, and survival. The difference is knowledge. The similarity is burden. Both figures stand inside a family name. Both inherit duties they did not invent. Both become larger than ordinary life, and both show why that enlargement can be frightening. This is the real bridge from Agamemnon to Dune. Not a copied plot, not a shared universe, not a simple claim that Paul equals Agamemnon. The connection is deeper than that. It is a shared grammar of power. A house claims greatness. A heir receives the burden. A war changes the family. A victory creates another debt. A return becomes dangerous. And history refuses to end when the battle does. Christopher Nolan's Odyssey may bring Agamemnon back into popular imagination. Viewers may meet him as a commander, a king, or a warning from the dead. Then, they may hear another ancient-sounding name in Dune, Atreides. And suddenly it will not sound like a futuristic invention. It will sound like what it always was, a name from a world of fathers and sons, of crowns and sacrifices, of royal splendor shadowed by ruin. Frank Herbert looked backward to build a distant future. That is often how the strongest science fiction works. It does not abandon old human patterns. It reveals them under new stars. The spaceships change. The weapons change. The language changes. But power still gathers around families. War still demands a story. Resources still shape destiny, and children still inherit consequences they never chose. So the next time you hear House Atreides, listen for the older echo. Listen for Atreus. Listen for Agamemnon. Listen for a king who won a legendary war, then discovered that triumph could not protect his home. Dune's desert may be far from ancient Greece, but its most famous family carries Greece in its name. And that small linguistic trace changes everything. It reminds us that the future is rarely free from the past. Sometimes, the past is waiting inside a single word, and once you hear it, you cannot unhear it.